What's up, GameLeapers? OPness Eags back at it. Hope you're all safe and sound. In today's video, boy, do I have a banger for you, because I'm going to be revealing the champion who's currently tearing up Korean Challenger solo queue and exactly what you have to do the same. And to be honest, I should have plonked this champion in our best top laners countdown. I just didn't think it was legit, but believe me, it is very legit, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some of this picked at MSI. But yes, before we get into it, guys, I have two simple requests. The first is to subscribe so you don't miss any of our Season 11 Red Hot content, and the second is to check out the GameLeap website for the ultimate Challenger tier learning resources that are guaranteed to help you improve and maximize your gains on the Rift. How easy was that? So get signed up, links as always in the description and comment section. Alright, let's get into it then, and it's time for the big reveal, and the champion behind the carnage is Lee Sin, and the Korean elite are playing the blind monk in the top lane and mid lane, and Dopa himself has said how broken Lee Sin top lane is in particular. And it's true, Lee Sin has the highest win rate out of every single top laner in the game. That's how broken he is. So why is this? Why has Bruce, and we ain't talking Wayne, suddenly become the nuts? Well, let's start by talking about the recent buffs to Lee Sin, guys, because without these, it wouldn't be nearly as viable, and I'll get into the runes, the build, the skill order, all of that very soon. So in 11.4, guys, right, reduced your Q's cooldown by a second at each rank, and just last patch they reduced your E's cooldown by 2 seconds. And for top laners, guys, whether you're playing a fighter or a tank, cooldowns are huge, and it's one of the reasons Gore Drinker, despite getting nerfed into the ground, is still viable because of its mythic passive, which gives you ability haze for each legendary item you have. And Lee, for the most part, has low cooldowns compared to the most popular top laners you guys are going to see. So think of Darius, Renekton, Jax. These picks and a lot of others have at least one ability that is on a long ass cooldown, and it's kind of their kryptonite in a way. And as Lee, you don't have that. So the buff cooldowns are great. Now the second reason why Lee Sin top is so stupidly OP is because of his passive. So each time you use an ability, your next two basic attacks have some extra attack speed. And on Lee Sin, guys, each of your basic abilities have 2 paths to them. So in theory, you can get in 12 auto attacks with this increased attack speed. Now this will never happen because no one is AFK enough, even in bronze, to let you do this for free. But even if you get in a few autos, it's a massive advantage in trades. It also lets you stack Conqueror faster so you can get to the magic 12 stacks ASAP, and you just can't lose. So all that sounds good. Are there any other reasons why Lee top is taking over? Well, yes, his W is also a big factor. You see, any champion that has a shield, guys, just think of Shen for example. These champions are very hard to beat in 1v1s or at least short trades because they are going to block some of your damage, and players in lower elos will waste their cooldowns on their shield. So that's nice, but the second part of Lee's W, Iron Will, is also very powerful when you're going toe to toe with the enemy top laner. And this is because it gives you lifesteal for the next 4 seconds. And like a shield, sustain is another massive condition when you're trading. And this is why Aatrox was so busted at the start of the season, and Olaf as well, because they had unlimited sustain. Now you're not quite at that level of OPness, there it is again, but you are one of the few top laners who has innate sustain. So it's certainly an advantage. But your W isn't useful when you're just fighting someone, guys. It's also useful to escape ganks or engages. So if a Darius pulls you in, you can simply W to a minion. Or if the enemy jungler is coming in hot, you can place a control ward or trinket down and you W to it to get out. And if we 180 that situation, so it's your jungler who's ganking, you can do the same thing to gap close towards that enemy top laner, so you can then land your E slow, your ultimate, and then your Q. So not only are you a slippery little sucker, you also have some of the best setup out of all top laners, and it's very hard if not impossible to avoid. And then we have the last reason why Lee Sin is busted top lane, guys, and it's one I low-key alluded to, your ultimate. And there are 3 reasons as to why the roundhouse is so powerful in this top lane. The first is because it is a great disengage tool. So if a Renekton all of a sudden slices and dices onto you to get a stun off for his incoming jungler, you can just tap R and that threat dissipates. Or if you're about to get tower dove, you can kick one of the enemy champions over the wall or away from their teammate, so you stop it from being a 2v1 and you buy yourself and your teammates time. The second reason is because it is a great engage tool. Now I'm sure you've all seen an insect being performed by a Lee Sin player, even if you're an Iron, they're probably commonplace, and it's almost like a singed flinging away. So when you're against a singed in lane, guys, it can be a bit treacherous when the wave is near his tower because he can fling you into his turret. Well, it's the same idea for Lee Sin's kick. If you get too close, he can easily W to a minion you're going to last hit and flash kick you, and you're probably going to die. And you can use the same combo or a lot of different ones with your ultimate to set up ganks for your jungler. So you can position yourself to kick the enemy top laner into your jungler, into your tower, away from their tower. You have so many options, and because top lane is such a long lane, you have a lot better chance of setting up these players rather than in the mid lane, which is way too short. And the third and final reason, guys, as to why your Dragon's Rage is so scary is because it guarantees your Q to land, and way too many Lee Sins don't do this. The best ones will, but too many don't. They try to land a max range Q or a Q when the enemy champion is mobile. You see, when you kick someone, guys, they are airborne and they will always travel in a straight line. So not only is there zero counterplay, they also can't deviate from that line. So as long as you have some airspace between you and the target, you will 100% land your Q. Now sometimes even the best Lee Sins will miss their Q when a target is airborne, so make sure you practice this before you pull out the Lee Sin top. So those are the big reasons why Lee Sin is currently smashing it, guys, but it's also essential to complement this playstyle with the appropriate skill order, runes, and build. And as we get get into the skill order guides on what you might start and max into particular champions, it is my last friendly reminder to you guys to check out the GameLeap website for the best up-to-meta content on the web. Our site is all you will ever need. Champion courses, champion guides, bottle analyses of the best players in the world. It is time to get around it so you can achieve your Season 11 goals. Links down below. So yeah, in terms of your skill order, it really depends on the champion you're going up against, but let's cover what ability you should be starting with at level 1. So if you're against ranged champions, you have two options. You can start with your Q, which you can use to either poke the enemy champion so they are easy to kill at level 3 onwards, and it's also useful to last hit CS because if you do run up against good players, you will take damage. The drawback though is obviously that if you miss it on the enemy champion, you have to give up the early lane, and it's on a 10-second cooldown, so you're going to miss 2 or 3 CS anyway if you're last hitting with that Sonic Wave. And the other option, and probably the better option, is to start W, purely because using your W on yourself is a lot easier than managing your Q, and the shield protects you from a bit of that range harass. Kind of like how a Shen uses his passive into ranged champions. Now if you're against any melee champion guys, whether they are incredibly strong at level 1 like a Darius or not that strong at all like a Nasus, starting E is the most consistent, and there are 3 reasons for this. First off, its range is larger than the auto attack range of every melee top laner, unless you count top lane Rengar, so you can get in free harass at level 1, a bit of chip damage. Secondly, the slow also comes in handy because more often than not a Tryndamere, let's say, won't be happy about you damaging him, so will dash after you like a lunatic, and you can just recast your E to slow him, and he will be even more mad. And the third reason is the AoE, which enables you to get all 3 melee minions of the first wave by just tapping E, and it also gives you the opportunity to outpush the enemy top laner so you can get to level 2 first, and if you quickly skill your Q at level 2 and land it, who knows what might happen. Now you can also start W into these melee champions, and the shield is useful for blocking some of that damage they might throw at you, so it might be a Renekton Q for example, or a Fiora Q. It also gives you more trading power than starting E because of the lifesteal, so if a Riven, let's say, suddenly Qs onto you and your creep wave or a Garen Qs in, you can retaliate and 100% win that mini trade. But the downside guys is that it is a little harder to CS, in the sense that if the enemy champion doesn't jump on you because your W does no damage, you're only using it defensively, and once you do use it, you're as useful as a wet paper bag. Your E on the other hand is on a shorter cooldown, gives you the chance to CS from range if the lane is a little scary, and gives you enough trading potential in the first couple of levels. Now let me just throw a cheeky tip at you here as well. Yes, I said you want to pressure the enemy champion early on, but Lee Sin's level 1 certainly isn't the strongest, nor is his level 2. So most of the time what you want to be doing, and you can do it all the time to be honest, is letting the enemy top laner push into you, so that when you hit level 3, the lane is longer, meaning that you have more room to chase your opponent down with your W, your E slow, and your Q of course, and this also makes them vulnerable as to ganks. Okay, so what do you max on Lee Sin top lane? Well, maxing E seems to be the way to go at the moment and is dishing up the best results. It has a much higher base damage than each part of your Q, and remember, you're not going to take your resonating strike most of the time because you'll be diving into Renekton stun and a creep wave, and it also deals magic damage. And most top lane champions guys are going to run armor in their runes against you, so you actually do a lot of damage to their health bar with your Tempest. So it's like you just E them off cooldown until they are low enough to execute with your R and Q. Maxing E is also best for your wave clear and even empowers your gank setup because the slow increases as well. So there's a lot going for an E max. Now you might want to put at least 3 points in your Q, or max your Q into ranged matchups or harder matchups so you can dive onto the enemy champion and quickly W out, so your playstyle is an in and out one, and it will do the most damage, but again, if you miss it, you're toast. So in terms of reliability, it's not as good as the E max. And you could also max your W first if you wanted to play really safe, but guys, you don't need to. The rank 1 shield and amount of lifesteal you get is enough to win trades, and the cooldown doesn't decrease upon leveling it up. And when we get into your runes in a few seconds, you'll see why maxing W is just overkill. You're better off ranking up your Tempest. So yeah, speaking of your rune page guides, go this every single game. Conqueror is by far the best keystone because you can stack it as fast as anyone, and the lifesteal at max stacks harmonizes with your W's lifesteal, which is why you don't need a max W. You know, you have another source of LS. Now Triumph is the best from the second row because it comes in super close throughout a game, whether you're 1v1ing in the top lane or 3v3ing a Rift Herald or 5v5ing later in a game, and yeah, presence of mind you don't need because your passive auto attacks restore energy. Tenacity is next because there is so much CC in the game, especially in the top lane with Stridebreaker and Chemtank at the moment, and finish off the precision tree with Cut Down because in those 1v1s in particular, you are more often than not going to come close to dying, and this amplifies that resonating strike damage and your damage overall. Then for your secondary tree guys, take Bone Plating because it is just the best for trading, and make sure to play around this as well. So when you have it up, start a trade, but when you don't have it, do be a little careful, especially if the enemy has theirs up. And for your other rune, take Revitalize, and this is all for your W. Both the shield and lifesteal get enhanced, which again is why you don't need to max your W because your runes instill it with enough power at its base rank. Now as we get into the build guys, the final section of this mini guide if you will, make sure to hit that sub button. That wasn't bad, was it? So yes, you'll build your first back, you want to aim for 1100 gold, which would give you an Iron Spike Whip, and the AD is useful because it gets pumped into your autos and abilities, but the active is also great for your comboing and wave clear. Now this should always be your first item, okay, and you want to follow this up with a Phage and Kindle or gem for your Gore Drinker. Now in terms of boots, you can go with Lucidity boots if you're ahead and feeling good about yourself, or you can just buy Steel Caps or Merc Treads depending on the matchup, and I would recommend going with Caps or Mercs. Now your next 3 items after that really depend on how you're going in that game and the champions you're up against. So you can go for Disengage if you feel the tankiness and sustain will be more useful to you, or you can go with Black Cleaver, which gives you 25 haste and more mobility via its passive, and either of these 2 items should always follow your Gore Drinker. And for your third major item, you can opt for Gauge or Cleaver if you didn't buy them already, or you can choose the buff Death Dance if you're against a high DPS bruiser like Riven or Fiora, or you can even choose Guardian's Angel, which is great not just in team fights but also the 1v1 because of the armor, and by the time you revive, your cooldowns are back up and it's very hard not to win. Now for your last couple of items guys, you can choose Spirit Visage if you're against a lot of AP, which is also handy for your W. You can choose Chempunk Chainsword, which is great if you're against an innate healer like Darius or Renekton. You can choose Randuin's Omen, Gargoyle, Stoneplate, Thornmail. It all depends on the team composition you're against and which item combination is going to make you as effective as possible. So that was the mini Lee Sin top lane guys. If you enjoyed it, let us know by leaving a like down below. And if you tried this out, let me know how you got on. This has been Coach Ease, and until tomorrow's video,